Have you ever thought about how much meaning can be packed into just a handful of words? Well, today we're diving into something pretty mind-blowing, the shortest chapter in the Quran, Surah Al-Kawthar. Believers call it a miracle, not because it's long and epic, but for the exact opposite reason. It's incredibly short and unbelievably dense. And that's really the big question, isn't it? How can just 10 words, that's it, 10 words in the original Arabic, hold layers of meaning, prophecies, and a literary power that people have been studying for over 1,000 years?
Yup, 10. The entire chapter. Let that sink in for a second. That's shorter than the average text message. But what we're about to unpack is how every single one of those 10 words pulls an incredible amount of weight.
All right, so let's get right into it. First up, we're going to unpack the chapter itself. What does it actually say, and what was going on when these words were first revealed? So you have to picture the scene. According to Islamic tradition, this chapter came down during a really tough time for the Prophet Muhammad. He was in Mecca, facing all this hostility. He just lost his sons. And his enemies were mocking him, calling him al-Abtar, which basically means the one who's cut off, someone with no legacy. It was right in that moment of pain and pressure that this chapter arrived. Okay, so that's the context. Now let's get to the content, because this is where things get really fascinating. This is where the claim of a miracle really comes to life, not just in what the words mean on the surface, but what they were predicting and what they were doing with language. It's wild. In these 10 little words, the analysis we're looking at points out 4 totally distinct things happening at once. First, there's a promise of this divine gift, al-Kawthar, which means a source of abundance. Second, you get 2 specific commands, pray and sacrifice. And then, number 3 and 4, you get these 2 jaw-dropping prophecies. 1, that the prophet's legacy would actually live on, and 2, that his opponents, the very people calling him cut off, would be the ones to have their legacy disappear. And check out the linguistic genius here. The chapter sets up these 2 powerful opposing ideas with just 2 words. You've got al-Kawthar, which becomes this key to unlocking all goodness and blessings, and on the flip side, you have al-Abtar, the key to failure, disappointment, being completely cut off. It's like an entire philosophy of success versus failure, all wrapped up in just 2 words. Now, the Quran makes this really bold claim throughout its pages, that it's inimitable, that you can't produce anything like it. And history actually gives us this incredible test case with this very chapter. This is the story of a failed imitation, of someone who took on the challenge and, well, you'll see. So there was this rival figure at the time named Musa, and he tried to create his own version of Al-Kawthar, and this is supposedly what he came up with. Listen to this. "We have given you the masses, so pray to your Lord and be public. Indeed, your hater is an infidel man." I mean, it kind of follows the same 3-part structure, right? But the moment you look any closer, the whole thing just completely unravels.
So why is it considered such a failure? Well, for starters, the structure is basically just copied. But the meaning is super shallow. Like, what does "we have given you the masses" even mean? And the command to be public while you pray? In Islamic practice, that would actually ruin the prayer. And the ending is so weak. Your hater is an infidel man. What if the hater is a woman or a group? The original is timeless, profound. The imitation? It's just clumsy and full of holes.
Okay, so we've seen the miracle inside the words, and we've seen the challenge to anyone trying to copy it. But now we've got to zoom out. The argument is that to really feel the full power of this chapter, you have to see where it's placed in the Quran. And that brings us to the miracle of context, this incredible sequence of divine gifts. The analysis tells us to look at the chapters that come right before Al-Kawthar. A couple of chapters earlier, in a chapter called Ad-Duha, God makes this very clear promise to the prophet. It says, "And your Lord is going to give you, and you will be satisfied." So right away, it's setting up this huge expectation. A major gift is on its way. And this promise wasn't made in a vacuum. It was the peak of this amazing buildup. The chapters right before it, Ad-Duha and Ash-Sharh, are just listing off all these gifts that have already been given: shelter, guidance, wealth, a heart expanded for his mission, and, this is the big one, a promise of an elevated, lasting legacy. It's like a drum roll leading to something huge. And you want to talk about that prophecy of an elevated legacy being tested? Get this. This quote is from a later political enemy, Muawiyah. He was basically fuming that no matter what his side did to build their own power, it was Muhammad's name that was still being heard in the call to prayer, 5 times a day, all over the world. He literally vows to bury that name. We all know how that turned out. So all these gifts that came before, this whole build-up, this promise of a gift so amazing that he would be satisfied, it was all pointing to a grand finale. And that brings us to the ultimate divine gift, the true meaning of Al-Kawthar. So what is Al-Kawthar? Well, it turns out it's not just one thing. It's everything. It's the grand total, the culmination of all gifts. It represents this abundant, never-ending source of goodness. It's described as a river in paradise. And, so importantly, it's understood to be personified in his daughter Fatima. It was through her that his family line continued, which was the direct, perfect answer to those enemies who called him cut off. So when you put all the pieces together, this tiny 10-word chapter stops being just a simple, comforting phrase. You realize it's the grand finale of a whole divine narrative. It's the ultimate comeback to his enemies, it's the fulfillment of earlier promises, and it's the guarantee of a legacy that's not just enduring, but abundant. And that leaves us with a pretty deep question to chew on, doesn't it? The story of these 10 words is a masterclass in the power of context. It shows how a few simple words can explode with meaning when you know the story behind them, the words that came before them, and the history that followed. It really makes you wonder, right? How much hidden context is changing the meaning of the words that you and I hear and use every single day?